All right, so I've got just any old picture up right now because I don't really know what to put behind this talk. I having difficulty with knowing what to say exactly here. I was thinking about just backing off from the community completely. I'm just worn out, I think, from just work, and sometimes this stuff gets more than I want to dive into because these are deep, pretty deep conversations. And bear in mind, I'm working like 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday. I don't have a lot of time to spend on videos or getting involved with a lot of deep conversations with people online. I tend to leave comments open so that people can chat amongst themselves and share things, but I need to not get overly wrapped up into the direct back and forth with comments. But recently I've been questioned a few things about my beliefs and beliefs in the end times, and is the Mandela Effect and the signs that we see, the connections to a great purging or separation of people, a purging out of those who are wicked versus those who are righteous, the symbolism with the Mandela effects. Is this all leading to a big end times apocalyptic and maybe very destructive and bloody and full of death event? I'm being asked to clarify my beliefs on the situation, and it's odd because when I'm asking God to help me clarify beliefs, the answers I was getting made me delete my last video. The my interpretation was, I'm just going to back away. I might even delete the channel. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to hash this out anymore. I mean, the series of things that occurred, and all that video was simply me documenting for myself that a trash can changed shape from one day to the next. And I saw it. It's a glitch in reality or a change in reality that I witnessed. And since that trash can, I've witnessed another change. And I was thinking about doing a video about that maybe later. But there's definite changes in reality that occur. Sometimes these things happen a day apart, a week apart, a month apart, 6 months apart, whatever. Sometimes they happen in real time, and I'm looking at it and the thing changes. So I was challenged to identify meaning with that change, like so many changes, so many Mandela effects have been identified, or at least I've seen connections to it being Jesus or Satan or the end times or the great separation of the righteous from the wicked, the great purge, the apocalyptic end and end times. I've seen thematically, even like Luke, I'm your father, instead of no, a dark father is saying know that I am your father, is like Satan saying that I know that I am your father. And Lucy, you've got some splaining to do, is Lucifer coming to judgment, and even the word judgment has changed. And I've got, I don't know, I've never counted them all the little links there are to the end times. And somebody called me out and said, don't you see your corner trash can, the corner shaped trash can that changed is a link to corner or corn, which is a link to harvest time and separation of the wicked and the righteous. And also Jesus is called the cornerstone. And then trash symbolically has to do with us being thrown in the trash or people being thrown in the trash. All of that stuff coming back. And I agree. I can connect. I can make those connections too. And is it just an overactive imagination, an intelligent game of jigsaw puzzling and Tetris and just fitting things that are just accidentally coming together, or are they intentionally coming together? Are these things placed before us to see signs and wonders, to see the end is coming near? And I know many people believe that these are all presented to us by God to give us a warning that the end is near. I understand that. I can completely get that. However, the issue that I have, so sometimes there truly are coincidences that are just coincidences, sometimes. But the Mandela Effect is a supernatural signs and wonder type event. I mean, it goes far beyond anything I've experienced, and I have to give it that kind of credit. And I've seen that reality itself seems to have a personality sometimes, almost in how it's directing me and what it's wanting me to do. And when it comes to the end times, this is the odd thing. Ever since I was a child in the 70s and was introduced to some churches and sermons about getting saved, the reason you get saved is because of a tremendous fear of eternal hell, torture, damnation. That this is a driver for saying the Lord's Prayer, because nobody wants that. That's worse than death, even. Far worse. So then that wraps into the final judgment, which has always been at the door. I mean, that as long as I've been alive, since being a child in the 70s, the end times has been at our door, coming any minute. We've always been 2 minutes to midnight. We've always been right there. And there is always confirmation. There was always these crazy confirmations, like you could connect the dots and say, yeah, this must mean we're right here. We're right at the end times. And here we are 50 years later, and we're still having the exact same conversation. However, I will admit it does feel like it's getting more intense. I mean, back in the 70s, it was the Russians going to nuke us, and that was the big thing. Now we've got a long list of things to end all humanity or cause great death and suffering, but it never ends. It's a never-ending trail of breadcrumbs that leads you to more and more terror and fear. And of course, you can say, I don't fear anything. I just put all my trust in God. But as you look into these things, and the Mandela Effect reaffirms it too, if you start connecting dots, you keep seeing the theme that all of this is coming to an end soon. And even people who are non-Christians, the New Age, and I know people don't like being labeled, so not New Age, spiritual, whatever you want to call it. You're more into Christ consciousness than into the physical Jesus. Many people channeling spirits and all the stuff, the channeling aliens, whatever. Everybody's in agreement almost on something's going to happen. Something's going to break here. The bubble's going to burst. The world is going to see suffering. Even atheists who analyze financial trends are saying this is not sustainable. It's going to bust. I mean, from almost every corner, we see voices saying it's not an optimistic future. This is even being called since 2008, I think, the doomer generation. We have a generation of doomers because everything seems so doom and gloom. I cannot deny that it just seems to grow. It never ends, and it just seems to grow. That frustrates me, to be honest. But so I tend to agree, and I've been listening to Matt, Quantum of Conscious, a lot, and I tend to agree. And I believe he would say, I think he would agree with what I'm saying here, that reality gives us these things because it wants us to be wrapped up in it. And I said that. I made this observation many years ago, that reality keeps trying to bait me into being emotionally connected and involved with physical reality. And Matt's always making the argument, that a philosopher would, that reality proves itself to not be real by its sheer absurdity. Like no true reality could act the way this reality does if you really break it down. There's a lot of truth to that. And I believe in, when it comes to the end time events and the end of the world, I believe he would say that reality gives us all of these confirmations because it wants us. It wants us to go down that rabbit hole. It wants us to go deep, deep, and deeper until we're buried in this. It doesn't seem to ever come, though. It just builds, but you never get the satisfaction of the finish. And that doesn't mean the finish isn't going to happen, but we do get very emotionally drawn into this. And there's a suggestion that reality itself feeds off of our fear and our emotion and our great conflicts with one another. I sense there's some truth to that. But that doesn't mean I don't believe that the end's going to come, or that we logically, it does feel very much like the end. But I say that and also acknowledge it's been the end. We've always been at the doorstep of the end since I was a child in the 70s. So what do you do with that? So I was questioned this hard question by two people who are claiming to be the end times in the book of Revelations, or Revelation as it is now, the two witnesses. And if you know your Bible and you know the two witnesses appear almost as a counter to the beast and the beast system and the man of sin and whoever the opposing players are against Jesus. They are like the defenders of Jesus and speaking truth. And when they speak, whether or not this is supposed to be taken as literal or not, their flames would come out of their mouth and consume their enemies. Now, I've been asked by the folks that believe that they are the end times two witnesses to support them, give them a voice. Because 7 or 8 years ago, I had an interview with this person, and we talked about his crazy reality experiences. And I at that time, we had no conversations about being end times witnesses, but I'm concerned. I have red flags that come up whenever end times witnesses happens, because I've studied some very crazy little cults that ended up with a lot of death and suffering in my life, because I went to college to be a theology major. I went to college and studied the Bible, and I studied cults, and I studied belief systems, and how people end up down rabbit holes that lead them to be convinced that it's all right to kill others. Still blows my mind, but I've seen that. One of the most chilling memories I have from back in the days when I was majoring in Bible and wanted to be a pastor was this video from the 60s, or even 60s or 70s. It was this man and this woman who believed that they were the end times two witnesses. And they wanted to prove that they were these witnesses by dying in the streets, because that's what it says in the Bible, that they would be killed in the streets and then raise up in 3 days. They'd come back to life. So they were brandishing their firearms to the police, and they were kind of hoping the police would shoot them and kill them so that they could be the fulfillment of this event. But the police weren't shooting them. They weren't killing them. They were just it was a standoff. So finally, these two decided they were going to have to just start turning their guns on each other to fulfill the prophecy, or the end times event. And these were small caliber pistols. So they started shooting each other, and they didn't die. I mean, it was slow and drug out, and they eventually died, but it was a painful and horrific event to watch. And I mean, I felt inside so sorry for them that this deception would bring them to that end, and the horrific way in which they died. And then there's other accounts of people not just killing themselves, but taking others with them and killing innocents like children and stuff like that. So I was saying to my Ernie, I was saying I find a very cult theme going on this week, and I get home literally right after hanging up the phone with him. I get in the house and I'm getting ready for bed, and we usually watch something on TV with the wife. And of all things, she says, let's watch the, what do you think about watching this? And it was Daughters of the Cult. And I was like, of course, that's the theme of the week. So I watched the Daughters of the Cult, and it's about this dude named Ervil LeBaron, which is strangely similar to Evil Baron. And Ervil, who I've never heard of before, which is mind-boggling considering the amount that I've studied and kind of looked into these kind of things. I could list off a lot of people who are well known. I've never heard of him. Is this new to my reality? Somehow? I don't know. I just know I've never heard of the guy. This guy was worse than Manson in a lot of ways. He had a family of people going out killing people, killing men, women, and children, babies, and he killed a lot of them and just indirectly and directly. And he did this because he felt God was telling him to do it, that he was an end times prophet. He was in Mormonism, and he was the two witnesses version in Mormonism. He was the great and mighty one, or whatever they believed it would rise up in the end times. And because God does condone the killing of children, in the Old Testament, you've got examples of this is fine by God. It's justified. It's rationalized. It's okay. So this guy kills all these people. It's horrific. It's horrific to even consider that this would be thought of. And he does this thing, all in the name of voices he's hearing in his head, or biblical precedent, or just plain evil. Evil Baron does all this stuff. And I don't want to encourage that. I don't want to encourage anyone to get into this level of extremism. I think we go down rabbit holes until we become these pawns of evil. And I do believe there's evil and good in this reality. It's the way it's designed. There's something out there that truly is bad. And why we are experiencing this, I don't fully get. It's a very dualistic reality in that sense. But I don't want to go along with encouraging anybody to get to this level of extremism. And I honestly don't know if these Mandela effects that are talking about the end times, or giving indicators or hints that we are in the end times, I'm not so sure that isn't nefarious, that there's a loose sucking system behind that, and there's something wanting to lead us down that path. It does appear to want to lead us down the path of doom. The message of doom is so clear to me. It from every corner, it's doom, 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 doom. And I tend to react against things when I see messages being pushed too hard. And with this one, I feel it's being pushed too hard. And I know this is going to probably offend a whole lot of people, but I have to be honest with what I feel about this. And I think we need to be careful about the voices we are channeling or listening to in our, whether you're Christian or not. If you think you're hearing a voice from God, I mean, some people call that channeling, because you're getting messages from the other side. Whether they're from God or not, we got to be careful and analyze, what is this message? I mean, there might be all kinds of connections there that seems like it's right, but it might not be right. We've got to be truly careful about the whole channeling thing. And some people don't call it channeling. They just say the voice of God in my head, the still small voice. This is the voice and what it's saying. How do you break that down and know whether or not that's God? What's your confirmation there? And how do you protect yourself and others from going down a rabbit hole so deep that you get into these extremes, and suddenly you're justifying the killing of children, dashing babies against rocks, as it says in the Old Testament? How do you keep yourself from going there? So the Mandela effect and Christians and the Bible and all of these changes that suggest that we are in the final judgment. And the final judgment, if for anybody that doesn't know what the final judgment means, it means that Very few people are saved. Most people are condemned to hell forever because God's going to do his separation of the wheat and the chaff. He's going to burn the bad ones, the ones who are not worthy of going onward with their spiritual selves for eternity. He's going to burn those away into the ever never ending lake of fire. That's what this means. That's what we're talking about when we talk about all the separation of the wheat and the tares. It's a great purge. It's an end of this reality and a great purge. And you have to ask yourself if that's what you believe God, I mean, and I'm talking about every person. Is this what is going to happen? Is this what you believe is going to happen? Is this what you believe God is? And before I encourage anybody again to go down that path and say the Mandela effects are telling us that we are at the end and God's going to come down with his hammer and deal out justice. Before I say that ever again, I want to be very cautious because I don't want to lead anybody into extremism, especially if they start hurting themselves or others. And I kind of apologize for maybe encouraging that in the past. All right, I'm going to end it. Thanks for listening. God bless.